In a fandom where arguing over waifus and husbandos is commonplace, it is no surprise that we'd like to recognize all these girls and guys and otherwise that catch our eyes. So here are your nominees for Best Cast of 2022.
バス停まで競争しよう。気持ちいい。誰が一番不安なんだけどって顔してる。じゃあ2人のパートはオケ流しとくから当てぶりの練習だけしっかりしてくるように。はい。ダメ。
立つ転がるだけだ。
だから待てっつってんだろうが。ヨハンもだ。
だって
馬刺し
唐揚げ。
すいません。
え？
早く早く。
おう。
チミモたちもね。競ってる。すごい気迫です。
両者一歩も引かない。プライドとプライドがぶつかってるんだ。
こんなこともあろうかと。もう一着備えてありますので。
なんかもうエレガントっていうか怖いこの人たち。
全員で昨日へ行くには登場スペースはいささか狭く、定員を3人に決め選抜のじゃんけんをすることにした。
じゃんけんぽん。
私、じゃんけんの才能がないんです。
第
The jury winner is Akebi's sailor uniform. And the public winner is Bochi the Rock.
Now, I don't think any of these results are particularly surprising. Kennedy, what do you think about these that really stand out in terms of their cast? Like, what do you look for in a good cast, and do these kind of exemplify that for you?
Well, I'll tell you what I look for in a perfect cast is something with a very bright color so that when I ask people to sign it, you can see their signatures a lot better. But in an anime cast, I suppose. What I mostly look for is I like stuff like a lot of synergy. I like a lot of fun and memorable characters, and I like watching them interact. And I think that Bochi is a particularly great example of a really great cast with really great synergy. I'm not at all surprised to see Bochi win something, although I tell you what I am a little surprised about, if I may ask about this. Now, Spy Family, I'm, to see it lose, okay, not terribly shocking given who won. I am surprised to see it so low on the jury winner rankings. I'm sure I speak for a lot of people when I ask, what's up?
Yeah, what is up? First of all, I think in terms of Budget Rock, you kind of captured, I think, why it won the public vote, having just this very charming cast dynamic, very funny, but also very lovable. But yeah, Spy Family, we placed it last not because we didn't like it, we just liked it the least, which I think is something you'll always find with a lot of these rankings. But this was primarily the case because we felt like, aside from the main three characters who have a lot of development in their relationship and their family dynamic, the use of the supporting characters was at times a bit lacking, in the sense that a lot of the times it felt like they only connected to one member of the main cast and had not really much of a connection or synergy with each other. So you would have characters like Damien or Becky who would deal a lot with Anya, and then characters like Nightfall who would only really deal with Lloyd. But between them there wasn't really much interaction, so it felt very much like these characters were very isolated from each other. So as a cast, there wasn't that much going on. It was.
Would you say it didn't provide much support?
Yeah, in a way, they all felt a bit
like a
disconnected from each other. Yeah, disconnected from each other. And in addition to that, some of us in the jury felt that the relationship between Yor and Lloyd while charming, didn't develop in any ways beyond the obvious. So it's very much this thing about, okay, they obviously start to develop some sort of appreciation or feelings for each other, and yours trying to be a good stepmother and stuff like that. But we sort of missed something that really spiced that up and made it a bit more interesting than just playing out this trying to be a family situation.
I mean, I'm gonna have to call you out now though, because if you take a look at your jury winner Akebi, all of the cast primarily interact with Akebi. It's not really a cohesive kind of bounce off of everyone kind of thing. Would you not agree? Or why did the jury place that first?
So what's different with Akebi is that Akebi is in essence very much a show about individuality. And the format of the show is essentially that Akebi is the lens through which this entire class of supporting characters is explored, and then also how these characters reflect back on Akebi and her personality traits. So this means that if you have an overview of the class, you see a shot of the class, you recognize every single character, you know what they're about, what they like, what they don't like, what they struggle with, what they maybe find interesting and stuff like that, while also still seeing them interact with each other in the background. Between these characters, they do have lasting friendships that we see sometimes highlighted in the front, but also just see naturally occur in the back of a scene. And what we found really amazing about Akebi is how this brought life to an entire class of characters. There's 16 characters in the classroom, and they all feel like they are fully realized individuals with individuality and thematic exploration and stuff like that. So the fact that you could be in a scene and look in the background and you see these characters with so much personality in their designs, with so much interaction with each other, it feels like no one's left behind, and that's a really powerful feeling to have when watching this show.
I see. So more of like a subtle kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kennedy, I come back to this question a lot throughout these awards because I feel like there's a lot of sequels, especially some that we didn't see coming. And I was surprised to see the Tatami Galaxy sequel on here. Did you watch the original?
So I watched the original 50 eons ago. Yeah, no, the original came out in 2010-ish, I believe.
Oh Lord.
Yeah,
Don't tell me that.
it's been a moment. I have not seen the new one quite yet. I've been meaning to get around to it, but I've just been too busy. But
How
yeah,
are your feelings around having a sequel to that come out? Like, did you feel like it could accept a sequel? How do you think it would go?
I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't really know in what way it's a sequel. I don't know if it's a continuation of the events that happened in the original, or if it's like an attempt at retelling it. I've been trying to avoid spoilers as best I can, and I'm sorry that it makes me a terrible conversation partner for this, but the original was good, and if this is anything like the original, it too is good.
I mean, I can't disagree with you there. I mean, the whole point of the original is that, again, through the lens of a single person watashi, we get to see like so many different potential livelihoods, and of course, coming along with that is a really diverse cast of like the kind of, like mischievous one, and then obviously the love interest.
Yeah, a very memorable cast.
No,
definitely.
And then of course those
wasn't
gods.
shocked to see it. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm just reminiscing. If any.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking like I'm definitely not shocked to see it nominated for best cast, even though I haven't seen this one yet. Like the minute I saw that on there, I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Whoops, would you mind giving us like a very brief overview? Like again, not spoiler territory, but
Yeah, of course. So it's going to be slightly difficult to talk about without verging into Tatami Galaxy spoilers. But one thing that is very distinct about the Time Machine Blues season compared to the original is that it kind of shifts the way the characters are presented, and that the original is very much written from the perspective of Watashi, the protagonist, and the way we get to know these characters is very biased. He is an unreliable narrator, and we get characters become sort of caricatures of themselves, and Watashi projects all these characteristics onto them that they really fully inhibit. And Time Machine Blues sort of switches that perspective off, where instead of having this really biased and projecting interpretation of the characters, we get to see who they actually are. And that is a fascinating depiction where we suddenly see, okay, these are the actual characteristics these characters have. This is how they actually behave in a normal day versus how Watashi sort of feels like they are, or how the aspects he projects onto them. So that's in itself an awesome contrast. And in addition, the Time Machine Blues is just a weird, fanatic, crazy time travel story where these characters just get to have so much dynamic dialogue and fun interactions and expressive moments where they really are brought to life in a way that they never were able to in the original series.
I mean, that sounds interesting to me. Like, and it's so obviously true that we do see it from kind of the unreliable narrator perspective of Watashi, because him putting everyone on a pedestal and such and such. So it'll be interesting to check that out. Finally, I just want to ask one last question. It seems like this category, I mean, I think every year, but it's always pretty varied in terms of the genres and styles of stories that it tells. Like in here, we've got mystery, we've got slice of life, we've got comedy, we've got action. How does that play into how a show reveals or shows its casts off, do you guys think?
So I feel like there's always going to be, in terms of addressing characters, a balance between their narrative, their stories, and their inner turmoils, as well as just their general personalities, their interactions, and more their outward face value impression. And for more lighthearted shows like Bocce the Rock, or in this case, to an extent, Time Machine Blues, it's very much about, do we like these characters in terms of their personality? Do we think they're interesting? Do we think they feel do we think they feel real? Which is something that Akabi does an amazing job of, like having this large cast of characters immediately feel so real, feel so genuine, and feel so fleshed out in their personalities. But then there's also these internal stories that might come up more in something like Vanitas, or these more narrative-based stories, where you really want to look at, do these characters have interesting personal stories, their narratives, their struggles, their themes? So it's a balancing act of how much you consider these things. And to call back again as to why Akabi won, it just has, in addition to having this large cast of characters that has a lot of personality, in the first season alone, almost every single one of them actually gets these really interesting themes surrounding them about identity and image. There's the characters struggling with feeling like they don't have anything to contribute, like no hobbies, no interest, nothing you're good at. Well, there are other characters who are really slowly trying to explore their own physicality or sexuality, which is something really delicate at that age that the series takes place in. And it just is this slow burn thing where we get to see these characters evolve and develop. So if I talk about personality versus narrative, then the best shows are the ones that do both. And it's also something that we see with Kaguya second place increasingly, where the first few seasons, or the few season, it's very much comedy, it's very much charming, fun, but now we are starting to get into these romantic narratives and more actual story, and that's just super impressive to balance these things.
What do you think, Kennedy, about the interplay between genre and how a cast is displayed?
I think Whoops really summed it up well, in that it's really it's a balancing act between like personality and narrative. Like, what's a character doing because this is their personality versus what is this character doing because this is the context of what's going on. And the mark of a really good cast of characters is when you can really find a sweet spot between those two and make your characters endearing and memorable. And, to harken back to what I said earlier, I think synergy is the mark of a really good cast. And especially if you can have synergy with a lot of characters, while still balancing personality and narrative, it's wonderful. Chef's kiss.
Yeah,
Chef's kiss indeed. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it off at. Thank you again to Kennedy Redbard for coming on. You can catch her at YouTube at Redbart is cool. And I had one last thing I wanted to ask actually. Is it time to call you Dr. Kennedy?
No, I have
Okay.
a master's. You can
You
still
have a
call
master's.
me.
Can I call you Master Kennedy?
You can. I suppose. Yeah. I mean, honestly,
I mean, it
if you
fits with
want to
the whole
call me,
medieval thing.
I guess it does. If you want to call me doctor, it wouldn't be accurate, but I also wouldn't stop you.
Well, then we'd be a whole group of doctors.
We would be. We would
That
be
would
a
be fun.
very highly qualified room of people.
There you have it, guys. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you in the next category.
Bye-bye.